congregation. The St. Kilda Hebrew congregation is, as we all know, one of the most prominent congregations in the Southern Hemisphere. And it's truly an honor for me to be here today with you and the members of your community. I'd like to also take the opportunity to commend you and your community for harnessing the incredible technology that we have in today's day and age that enables us to be able to do this. And I think, there are many things that we've learned from this whole coronavirus experience, many positive things. And one of them is that we've realized how easy it is for us to be able to connect to each other, particularly during difficult times. And as you all know, Queensland is hot in the news these days. Sorry to inform you all, but it looks like the AFL might be moving up our way a little bit in the not too distant future. And if any of you have any family or friends part of the AFL and you want to come up to Brisbane, we will welcome you with open arms because we are a very warm and welcoming community. And as I can see some familiar faces over here on the on this chat, people who have connections to Brisbane. I can see Paulette Cherney here. Paulette is the sister of a very esteemed late member of our community, late Michael Solomon, who was a staunch communal supporter and a very, very strong member of our Shule and member of the Brisbane Chabad Kaddish and Maccabi and many other organizations. And it's very nice to see you, Paulette, and welcome to this session. And it's also lovely to see Rodney Phillips. Rodney was up in Brisbane for a while as the CEO of the Brisbane Symphony Orchestra. And Rodney and I are trying to organize something special in Brisbane in that regard. Please God, next year to honor the 135th anniversary of the Brisbane Hebrew congregation. So please God, with Hashem's help, it'll all come together and it will be very beautiful. As Rabbi Ronnie said, being the rabbi of a community which is a little bit further out than Melbourne and Sydney, most people that I speak to overseas, and they hear that, Rabbi Jaffe, they say, oh, you live in Australia, is that Melbourne or Sydney? And I say, no, it's neither. And they say, what? Is there another Jewish community in Australia besides for Melbourne or Sydney? And I say, yes, there certainly is. There are other communities. And we're in Brisbane. I'm very proud always to tell people that I come from Brisbane because we have a wonderful community. And even though it's relatively small and spread out, but it's really a magnificent community. And the people here are wonderful. We've got many, many very, very special individuals here. And there are many wonderful stories over the years. As Rabbi Ronnie said, we've been here for 25 years now. And over that time, there have been quite a few interesting stories. And there's one story in particular that stands out that is one of the most incredible stories that we experienced here in Brisbane. And I thought that I'll share with you that story today. And it's quite a remarkable story, I think. And I hope that you'll all agree with me. In fact, you're the first people to hear this story publicly because we've been meaning to record this story and perhaps, have it printed somewhere. But this is the first time that I'm publicly telling this story. And I hope that you enjoy it and find it as inspiring as I do. I must just mention also how lovely it is to see people here from Emi Monash joining in. I think it's incredible. Like I said before, this technology that we have today allows us to be able to connect to people all around the world and in any situation. And I just think it's wonderful that your community is giving the opportunity for those who are in the Emi Monash and other places where they might be a little bit perhaps isolated from Shule, but to have the capacity to be able to join together with their congregants and with their members of their leadership of the Shule. And I'm particularly pleased to be able to address those members in the Emi Monash and other places, people who maybe, are not able to get out as well or as easily as others. So here's the story, okay? In early 2015, I received a phone call And the young lady that introduces herself on the phone, she says, Rabbi Jaffe, my name is Shana O'Brien, and I am the fiance of Gary Siegel. And we would like you to marry us. And I would like to come to have an appointment with you to talk about marrying me and Gary. And the reason why we would like you to marry us is because Gary was very close with you in the past. I know you might be a bit surprised to hear this, but we're planning to get married and we would very much like you to marry us. So I said, no problem. Sure, we made an appointment. And as I put down the phone, I thought to myself, oy vey, Shana O'Brien, obviously not very Jewish. And, you know, Gary was a good friend of ours. When he was younger, he was, you know, more involved in the community. And, you know, he was becoming quite involved. He was coming to Shule regularly. And in his teenage years, in his later teenage years or early university years, he kind of just drifted away. And we actually didn't see him for probably about 10 years. And I tried to keep in touch with him from time to time. And it was always on my mind, you know, what's going to happen to our friend Gary? You know, Mitzvah Hashem is going to come time for him to get married. I sincerely hope that he's going to find himself a nice Jewish girl. And now this Shana O'Brien is calling me up about wanting to marry her and Gary. So I thought, oh, you know, well, look, let's see. We'll have a chat with them. Let's see what it's all about. You know, I didn't want to jump to any conclusions. Anyway, they came to my home the next night or whenever it was, sometime later that week. They came at the appointed time and they walk into the, you know, I see she's a blonde looking girl, not particularly of a Jewish look, but, you know, you don't draw any conclusions about anybody. They came inside. You know, I was really happy to see Gary again. And we sat down and we had a cup of coffee, cup of tea, and we started speaking. I said, no, tell me the story of what happened over here. And Shana starts telling me the story. And this is the story she tells me. She says, my great grandparents were Jewish. My great grandmother, their daughter, married a non-Jew. And they had a daughter. And she also married a non-Jew. And they had a daughter, my mother, who also married a non-Jew. So I immediately realized that this young lady sitting in front of me was actually Jewish. So that was already a good start to the meeting. And she says to me, she says, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And I used to, after school, I used to spend time at her house. My mother was working. So I used to go to my grandmother's and my grandmother would tell me, you know something, Shana, you're Jewish. Because it goes down the line of the mother. And even though your great grandmother married out and your grandmother, I married out, and your daughter married out of the faith. My daughter, your mother married out, but nonetheless, you are down the line, the maternal line, you were Jewish. And I want you to remember that you're Jewish. And she taught her certain things. And she said, one thing I want to ask of you, Shana, I want you to promise me that when the time comes that you need to get married, that you don't make the same mistake that we all made, and that you marry a Jewish fellow. And Shana took it very seriously. But she had no idea where she's going to start. She had no connection with anything Jewish. She had no connections in the Jewish community, nothing. She's quite an outgoing personality, and she worked in telemarketing. And this is a story she tells me, an amazing story. She says, Rabbi Jaffe, she says, I called somebody a few months ago to sell them a product. I don't remember what the product was. And I'm talking to this person, and in the background, I hear Hava Nagila. And I knew Hava Nagila is a Jewish song. It's an Israeli song, a Jewish song. So she says, I'm talking to this fellow. And she says, in the middle, I say, hey, that song playing in the background, that's a Jewish song, isn't it? And the guy goes, yes, it is. She says, are you Jewish? And the fellow says, yes, I am actually. She says, oh, great. She says, are you married? And the guy goes, yes, why? She says, oh, what a pity. And the man says, what do you mean, what a pity? I don't even know who you are. She says, well, I'm looking for an unmarried Jewish man. And the fellow says to her, look, I'm married, but I'll tell you something. I've got a brother-in-law who's Jewish, and he's not married. If you want, I'll be happy to give you his number. So he gave me, she's telling me the story, this lady, Shana. She says he gave me the phone number of his brother-in-law, Gary Siegel. So I immediately picked up the phone and I called Gary Siegel and I said, Gary, my name's Shana. I'm looking for a Jewish man, not married. Would you like to meet for coffee? Now, Gary's a very reserved kind of guy. He's not the most outgoing person. He's a lovely fellow, but he's not the type of person that's going to go and call somebody, go and call somebody who's never met before. So he took a number and he put it on top of his dresser in his bedroom and he just left it there. Of course, his mother, like a good Jewish mother, she comes into his room one day. She sees on the cupboard, there's a girl's name on a piece of paper with a phone number. She says, Gary, who's this Shana? With the phone number. So Gary goes, oh, some girl. She called me. She wanted me to go out for coffee. Looking for a Jewish man. So Gary's mother, Heather, she says to Gary, Gary, what's the matter with you? Give her a call. Go out with her. What do you have to lose? So Gary reluctantly calls her. They go out for coffee. They start talking. And one thing leads to another. And they decided to get engaged. And they decided to get married. And here they are. Rabbi Jaffe, we would be most pleased and honored if you would officiate at our wedding on the 5th of December. So I said, look, let me check my calendar. And I checked the 5th of December was in the middle of Hanukkah. It was Sunday Hanukkah. Now, and I don't know if any of you have been to Brisbane, but usually Sunday Hanukkah, we have the largest Jewish event in Queensland, happens on Hanukkah, on the Sunday of Hanukkah, which is Hanukkah in the city. And it's a very big event and it takes up a lot of, it's a kind of event that doesn't really allow too much time for anything else on that day. So I said, look, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I said, but that day I'm not available. But we can find another date which is suitable. She says, Rabbi Jaffe, you're probably wondering why we want to get married on the 5th of December, 2015. I said, well, to be honest, I didn't really think about why you Dafka want to get married then. But now that you're telling me this, why do you want to get married on the 5th of December, 2015? And she took out a ketubah, a marriage certificate, which Rabbi Ronnie is going to put on the screen for everybody to see. And I'd like, if you don't mind, Rabbi Ronnie, to show everybody the certificate of a marriage certificate of Shana's great-great-grandmother and grandfather, who were married in London, as you can see on your screens. They were married in London on the 5th of December, 1915. In the United Synagogue, London. And Shana tells me that I made up, when my grandmother asked me to find a Jewish man, I decided that I'm going to find a Jewish man and I'm going to marry him exactly 100 years to the day that my great-great-grandparents were married in the United Synagogue in London. And that is why we want to get married on the 5th of December. So I said to Shana, I said, Shana, let me tell you something. If you look on that marriage certificate, you'll see there's an English date and there's a Hebrew date. The Hebrew date on that marriage certificate is the 28th of Kislev. The 28th of Kislev is actually not the 5th of December, 2015, but it actually turns out to be on the 10th of December, 2015. And on that day, I will be available to marry you, and it will be my absolute pleasure to officiate at your wedding on the exact same Hebrew date, the 28th of Kislev, 2015. And on the 28th of Kislev, 2015, I had the immense pleasure, together with my wife present, and I think one or two of our children may have been there also, to marry Shana and Gary. It was actually, they had a relative who had a beautiful property in Mount Tambourine, which is a very picturesque area just between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And we officiated, and they just recently, a few months ago, had their first baby daughter, who is going to be named, please God, at the Brisbane Synagogue sometime in the very near future, because we are back at Shule again now, formally named. And that is one of the most beautiful stories that I personally experienced. And like I said, you guys, or I shouldn't say you guys, you esteemed members of the St. Kilda Hebrew congregation, and of course my friend Graham Osborne, who's from Boona with us today, one of the members of the Brisbane Hebrew congregation, who's joining us too. You were the first people in Australia, in fact in the world, to hear this story. Oh, Abigail's there too. Hello, Abigail. So I thought that would be a nice story to share with you. If anybody has any questions, I'll be very happy to accept any questions. But that's just one story of a number of incredible similar stories. But I would say that one's probably the one that takes the cake, because it's a very, very incredible story. And what it does is that story shows us, it demonstrates to us how the neshama, how the soul of a Jew is always awake, and it's always there, and you just have to tap into it. And sometimes it could be after many generations that it comes back to life again, and it wants to reconnect to its source, where it comes from. And I just think that the story, on many levels, it demonstrates to us the incredible power of the neshama of a Yiddish person, and how, no matter how, how many generations it might take, but we always have a desire to come back home, to reconnect to our roots. So once again, Rabbi Ronnie, I want to thank you very, very much for giving me the opportunity to address your esteemed congregation. And I would like to take the opportunity to bless you and all of your congregation, that you should continue to grow from strength to strength, materially and spiritually. And please God, we are now in the 3 weeks of destruction between the time of the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av. It's a time, even though it's a time of destruction, but our rabbis tell us that during this time we have a tremendous power and ability to build and to transform the sadness into happiness. So just like this story about a lost soul that was transformed, came back to their people and rejoined the Jewish community, may we all join together very soon in the Bet HaMikdash, in the third temple in Yerushalayim, together with Mashiach, speedily. Amen.
Thank you very much. Very good. Now, I've unmuted almost all of you already, but before this gets out of hand, I can see someone waving. So if you want to speak, perhaps wave and I'll just say your name, and then, yes, so we've got, I won't say her first name because she's my mother, so it's rude. But my mother, who goes under the name Ruth's iPad, I think is the first person to wave. Those people, by the way, who haven't got their video on, you may have to send me a message if you'd like to ask a question or comment, but otherwise, others can feel free to wave. Yes.
Rabbi, I think I got slightly confused. Was it the great-grandparents of the colour that had the ksuva? Yes. I thought you said in the first place that lady had married out also.
The women in the family had all married out, and this girl was the great granddaughter
So how did she get married?
Of the original person who got married in the United Synagogue in 1915. But
Also, it was only generations after that married out.
yeah, each generation from the great-grandmother, each daughter had married a non-Jew.
Mhm.
But each one of them had a daughter, and the daughter ended up marrying a non-Jew. But going down the maternal line, they were all Jewish.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, anyone else? So, without further ado, I'd say thank you very much, Rabbi Jaffe. Looking forward to seeing you face to face when our restrictions ease. And as I said, I'm looking forward to defrosting up north as I do each year. Before I bid you all farewell, I certainly hope that this was a success, because we're going to try this again in 2 weeks' time. And Rabbi Jaffe, you're welcome to join again. We have, in 2 weeks' time, the topic is called Off the Beaten Track. I know we've all been constrained from traveling, cruising, flying, and so on, but we have an opportunity to share a travel experience in 2 weeks' time called Off the Beaten Track, where our intrepid travellers, John and Beth Slutskin, who, by the way, have travelled to around 130 countries, I didn't realise there were that many, are going to share with us some of photos of places they've visited that are visited less often. And so we're going to have a great experience in 2 weeks' time. Hopefully the number that I send you next time for the Zoom ID will be not missing a 5 or any digit, but it'll be the correct numbers, but it'll be in fact the same code, but the same correct code in 2 weeks' time, 12:30. I wish you all a safe and pleasant day for the rest of the day, and also remain safe. Remember, you should be doing one of these. Have with you your mask if you're going out. Let's do the right thing. Make sure you wash your hands and do all the things that the government is promoting, because it's up to us as individuals to do the very best we can to make us and everyone safe. All the very, very best. And thank you very much for the messages that are coming through from the Hellensteins and so on, for those who have enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Rabbi Jaffe, all the very best to you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good Sabbath.
Bye.